आओ जी, आओ जी, आओ जी आयान।
Good evening, Sat Sri Akal, and welcome to Maja House and our very special session this evening, which is on Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, a docu-series in 24 parts. Filmmaker and writer Amardeep Singh, who is here with us with his wife Vininder Kaur, have made this visually absolutely stunning docu-series. And it's all about his vision to communicate Guru Nanak's message of love and universal fellowship. It's steeped in historical texts and documentation from over 150 sites that they visited, also many of them from different faiths. And the two of them, Amardeep and Vininder, had traveled across the subcontinent and beyond to about 9 countries to record the travels of the Guru as he traversed the vast distances in his spiritual quest. To tell you a little bit about the two of them first, Amardeep Singh and Vininder both live in Singapore. And both of them took this arduous journey and traveled over these 9 countries, like I said, for over 3 years. And many of these countries were conflict ridden. Educated at Doon School and the Manipal Institute of Technology, Amardeep did his MBA from the University of Chicago. And before becoming an independent visual ethnographer and researcher, he worked in the financial sector for 25 years and was head of the Asia Pacific region at the American Express. He's written 2 books and he's also produced and directed documentary films. Vininder Kaur is director, scriptwriter, and music coordinator of this docu-series. And she's been educated at the Convent of Jesus and Mary in Dehradun, and she has a degree in fashion design. She's also been teaching at the ONGC College of Vocational Studies, and she's edited these 2 books, which Amardeep had put together. Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, and the second one called The Quest Continues. What I thought we would do right in the beginning is to see a trailer of Allegory. And I think many of you might have already done so. You might also be following the series and therefore have watched the 4 episodes which are already on air. But let's look at the trailer before I go into questions.
Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness, is a guiding force for many. Born in the 15th century, Guru Nanak glided across distant lands for over 2 decades on an altruistic pursuit. To relate with people of diverse cultures and belief systems, he engaged in philosophical and social dialogue. Through the medium of words and music, he gracefully imparted experiential insights, fearlessly challenged the binary constructs of society, and relentlessly opposed gender, religious, racial, and class inequalities. Today, in the 21st century, geopolitical restrictions and cultural mandates impose immense challenges to trace Guru Nanak's extensive travels.
My name is Amardeep Singh. I retrace the life events of Guru Nanak as narrated in the earliest historical texts.
We navigate through Punjab, the land of the 5 rivers, and travel to the Sundarbans Delta, sail across the ocean to the Sangladeep Island, scale the Himalayas to reach the region of Meru Mountain, and trudge the dunes to cross the deserts of Hejaz. Guided by Guru Nanak, who saw no stranger, our team remains internally borderless while navigating through physical borders.
गुरु नानक देव जी ने हम लोग परमपिता परमात्मा का नाम बताया. उनका नाम एक ओम. सारा संसार असत्य है, परमात्मा सिर्फ एक सत्य.
He had his own message of oneness of humanity, and that cut across all regions, all caste barriers, all religions.
دا بابناکو چې په کوبل په پېښور ګرځېدو دا ارمندو کې لوړو څوک په یوازې دي څوک په بل
कोई सी बात तो बोले कि आप में और मेरे में क्या अंतर है.
530 years ago coming, on uncharted lands, he didn't know the language, but still making such a big impact, an impact which not only had permanence, which was carried on.
ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਹੈ. ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਪਿਆਰ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਬਾਬਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ.
Narratives associated with Guru Nanak's voyages are embedded with philosophical expositions that aid the mind's alchemy. Akin to the unraveling of an allegory, anecdotes from his travels evoke insights that facilitate navigation through the mist of life. Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, a 24-episode docu-series. Join me in this humble attempt to understand Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness.
Amardeep, this is really one of the most stunning docu-series. I mean, the 4 episodes that I've seen, they are really, really stunning. I mean, in every way that you can think of. Let me first begin with asking you about your own journey from a very different field, from a corporate life into this life of seeking. I'd like to know about how you equipped yourself for this. What were the particular skill sets or whatever you might want to call it before you embarked on this really ambitious and very, very large journey?
Well, first and foremost, Preeti, thanks a lot for giving us an opportunity to me and Nikki to actually be on this forum. Appreciate that. And thank you for putting in your good words. I'm glad to hear that you feel the connect with the first 4 episodes that you've seen. For those who are not aware, the weekly episodes are being released on the website called thegurunanak.com. This entire it's a narrative langar. It's a narrative langar which is being offered free of charge, and it's being run by the community support. As long as community keeps supporting, we will keep growing, right? So with that as a background, your question is about skill sets and a very different lifestyle, right? Or what I was doing earlier. Well, in my mind, there is no difference because I've been living a lifestyle which is pretty much an internal and an external. The world sees what they want to see or what they perceive to be as what we do, and that's the life that they know me in terms of my corporate world, my academic qualifications, and so on and so forth. But internally, I've been living a life right from my early days, about 17, 18 years. Certain things happened in my life which moved me in a particular direction. Right, wrong, good, bad is not what I'm going to pass as a judgment, but they were not the bed of roses, right? Let's put it this way. And in Guru Nanak's own verses, he says, "Dukh daru, sukh rog bhaya." When there are challenging phases of life, dukh out here does not mean unhappiness. Out here means challenging phases of life. They become the medicine. And if you only keep having beds of roses, that becomes a poison. Dukh daru sukh rog bhaya. So in some ways, when I look back at my life, I'm now 56. From as early as 17 years, certain events happened which motivated me to do a lot of self-study. And by the time in 2014, when I left the corporate world, I did not leave this world, the cushy job of the corporate world, though it seems to be cushy, but it was very demanding there too. But I didn't leave it because I was actually wanting to do this path as my next phase. It just happened. It just happened. And sometimes I feel now is that the energies are looking for a moment when they are going to sense that you're prepared. And when you're prepared, the cosmic energy ensures that the gates for the other path does not open for you in a positive sense, right? And that's exactly what happened for me. I could have been just running that treadmill till I retired about 65 years of age, but it happened at the age of 56. In 2004, 48 or 49, I pretty much left the corporate at a very early age, right? And my job was moving to Australia, and I just decided to leave. Probably I was egoistic. I'll get picked up. I was sitting at a big role, at a senior level role. I get picked up. It was not supposed to happen. But what helped me was the parallel life that I was living. I'm one of those corporate executives, probably from the finance sector, who has never known how to hold a golf club. I've never played golf. The entire finance industry plays golf. I've not spent my evenings going for a drink gathering. My time was precious, and I was spending it a lot into spiritual studies, philosophical studies, musicology, art, and photography, and then all those layers somehow were prepared, history, and so on and so forth. And then in 2014 started this desire when I was not getting another job. I just left. There was a gap. I decided to go to Pakistan. And I went to Pakistan just for my own personal quest, to understand two things. One is, why is it that my community today, 7 decades after, that time it was not 7 decades, but it was 60 probably 7 years after partition. Why is it that my community cannot remember more than just 3 or 4 gurdwaras, Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib, when the most glorious chapters of our community churned in the lands of the Indus region? Which we don't have any access to. My parents were from there. So there was a personal objective, and there was an objective of, can I go and see those chapters of history which I've been reading for so much, the glorious chapters of our community? Where are those footprints? No one shows it, right? And that resulted in the first 2 books called Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, and the second one, The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, documenting our community's legacy footprints across 126 cities and villages from Kashmir, Baltistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Punjab, Sindh, and Balochistan. So it is not Punjab centric. And that's the paradigm I wanted to shift, that today we are very Punjab centric. And our Guru Nanak, for instance, was all over the Indus belt, from Baltistan right up to Sindh and Balochistan. We, being in East Punjab, are not able to see the bigger vision from where we came. And that's the thing I want to demystify out of these 2 books. And that's what they did. These 2 books were first put together, and then I did these 2 documentaries, candid documentaries. They were not planned out. They are on the YouTube, freely available, called Peering Soul and Peering Warrior. Peering Soul has been translated into Punjabi as Trasdi Rooh. One is about the spiritual legacy remnants, and I'm not focusing on Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib, because the world knows about them. I'm trying to look at the remote areas in where the spiritual sites are lying, and then the forts of the Sikh era along the Indus River up to the Afghanistan border. A lot of them are actually inaccessible, and I've had an opportunity to go inside them, and I've documented that, the Peering Warrior documentary. These works kind of prepared me to embark on what we have undertaken. We started seeding this consciously to do this at the end of 2018, but the thought has been in the mind for long. But without these earlier works, I think the takeoff point would not have happened. The trajectory would not have happened. That's how the Allegory, a Tapestry of Guru Nanak's Travels was seeded in the end of 2018. The journey started in 2019, Jan.
Right. So just to go to Vininda, because she has that beautiful painting hanging there just behind her. And that is the image that we see everywhere, wherever you, it's on your site, and it starts each episode as well. Vininda, I really think that is a stunning and really large piece of work. And I'd like to know a little bit more about it, if you can tell us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Preeti, again for having us over and giving us this opportunity. And I would love to tell you about this painting. This is the landing page for a docuseries. And well, this is a 6.5 feet by 4.5 feet painting, which encompasses the entire life journey of Guru Nanak in this one artwork. And if you see each element, the artist has made with a meaning behind it. It's got a story from Guru Nanak's narrative. And each element, whether even if it is a small flower there, there's a meaning behind it. I think probably we would need another session to just discuss the entire painting. And just to tell the name of the artist, her name is Dati, and fortunately she's a daughter. And
yes, that's really remarkable. Yeah, and it's a remarkable piece of work. I mean, you can just see the detail and the layers in the painting, and what you're saying is completely right, because I'm sure there's not only a story to each little element in the painting, but it also encompasses in a manner the entire series that you've
yeah, absolutely. Every episode she's picked up an element from each episode, and so you can see there's a whole landscape which talks about maybe if I can just put the camera a little ahead, if you can see the mountains there. There is a sunrise which starts from Guru Nanak's birthplace in Nankana, and she gives a sunrise with mountains there. And then she has, if you see on this side, we have Kartarpur there, and you have the twilight there. So just to give you a little gist on that, that twilight, according to her, means that Guru Nanak passed on the baton of his philosophy to other people. So it was not the end, it was just passing on that baton to carry forward his philosophy. So yeah, this has been, if you see, she's put human element in the foreground. In the background is all the nature element, and then she's put all the monuments there, if you can see. Yes. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Yeah, and so yeah, it is very, very detailed, and probably we'll need another session to talk more about it. Yeah. So anything, another thing, if you see that she saw all the 24 episodes before, and she read a bit of the Janam Sakhi text to really incorporate the entire artwork into this one piece.
Right. For you, though, for both of you, for Amardeep and you, you've talked about the simplicity of Guru Nanak's message. So for you, what was this message? I mean, what is the crux of what you were trying to say, to tell us, to bring people into the fold again? Because of course, you have different, religions propagating their own messages now, and a lot of divisiveness in society that one sees around. But what I think is actually valuable is the simplicity, and the thing that actually grabs your attention and completely grabs your heart right away. So for you, what was that, Amardeep?
Well, for me, it's simple that Guru Nanak's message in the simplest form is that the numeral 1, which he has put as the first number in his Japji Sahib, is oneness, right? And I think what we are trying to do out of this docu-series, at least as the creators of the docu-series, there's a huge energy that has supported us, right, and enabled it. So it's a collective energy and collective consciousness that's trying to do it. Whether it's if you look at a team on a website, it's not Sikhs or adherents of Guru Nanak only doing it. I mean, deep down there is a cross interfaith, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs across countries. A large, big team has got together to do it, right? And that numeral 1 just expresses the entire expression of oneness, right? And I think today, when you look at there's so much of fragmentation, and the narrative of Guru Nanak has become so laden with myths, mythologies. I have struggled to find one book written by any English or any of the Sikh authors, for instance. And we have acquired the English language. It's not our language, right? And the Indic languages have a very expressive term in their words. But when you acquire a language and you try to write your own philosophy, I've read a lot of books about our faith and many other faiths about the Indic traditions. But I don't find any book describing what Guru Nanak's philosophy stands for. Everyone describes him as he's a proponent of monotheism, right? Well, he's not an Abrahamic faith preacher out here. He was an advocate of monism, about oneness. Monism and monotheism are very different. And monotheism is like, distinct God, the messenger of God and the creation being very distinct, and God is one. But when it is monism, everything is one. We are all intertwined. And when you're all intertwined and interconnected, anything that I do here affects you and everyone. And therefore, the message out here is to how to unbox Guru Nanak. In this 24 episodes, about 20 hours of content, the humble attempt in our mind is to try and unbox Guru Nanak. I'm not saying that we would have succeeded. The viewers need to decide that, but we are trying to unbox him.
So now if you can actually take us with you on this journey and tell us a little bit about how it was to be traveling, because of all these political, geopolitical borders, restrictions on travel, all these many borders that you're crossing. In the first two episodes itself, you talk about just crossing from India to Pakistan or vice versa, where you have to go across Wagah, and you actually point to that a couple of times. Will you tell us a little bit about the challenges first, you Amardeep, and then I would like to hear from Vininder about her particular experiences also, especially as a woman.
Right. No, thanks. Before sharing the challenges, I'm not going to be egoistic here. Don't get me wrong, right? But because we've lived this journey, I can tell you this probably will not repeat. I'm very, very clear. We were crazy enough to take risks that have imposed significant challenges to us, and we have had very near life experiences, right? Death experiences, but I will not get into that because neither in my two books or in the docuseries on Guru Nanak we have ever told our story. This is not about our story. This is about Guru Nanak. You will find us as hosts taking you through that journey, but we have stayed away from telling our story. That's a story for some other day, if life permits that much of breath to write it, right? But I can tell you it will not repeat, right? So when you say a opening statement like it'll never repeat, that itself should show you, may allow you to think about potentially what the challenges could be. And I will say the other thing: if it was so easy, wouldn't it have happened much earlier, and people would have done it much earlier, right? The biggest challenge actually in this journey is not the physical journey. It's not the sights. That's where I think we mistake this whole thing. In Guru Nanak's journey, the biggest challenge is what is the journey of the narrative? Because Guru Nanak's narrative today has been laden with myths, mythologies, and every place where, even I sometimes jokingly say, wherever the Indian army has been posted, or the Punjabi regiments have been posted in the post-1947 scenario along the India and China border, every few years a new Gurdwara opens up as a Sardham Sthal, and then slowly Guru Nanak appears, and then it becomes a site for everyone to come in. Is that the narrative we're going to take? Is this a narrative about sites? I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not a person who's going. I'm not an anthropologist who's going and looking at just cultures. I'm trying to deep down understand the philosophy of Guru Nanak. We are all trying to understand the philosophy of Guru Nanak, and the sites and the cultural aspects and the geographies are a mere excuse to get you into a National Geographic kind of a wow factor, to show you the scenery, get your attention, and then we talk about his philosophy. That's the whole idea. So I think that's the biggest challenge, the narrative challenge. The second thing is, as you start getting into the different regions, there's 70% of the geographical region is today inaccessible. I mean, I have traveled to 126 cities and villages in the making of my two books in Pakistan. How it happened, I don't know. It happened in 2014 and 2016. And all I've done is I've given it a structure and I've documented. That's my contribution. But that energy that enabled it, I can tell you when I was doing it, there was no planning. It just happened. Can I still repeat it? Absolutely not. Right? And then when you start taking that to say, now I'm going to take cameras and go back into these countries, it becomes that much more challenging. And now you take it into Afghanistan, you take it into Iraq, Iran is isolated. The world, you're not allowed to get inside to film. You go into Tibet. You cannot take drones into Tibet. You can't take cameras into Tibet to film, right? And how are you going to do it? And how are you going to come to the India-Tibet, the China and Tibet border, China and the Tibet region and the India border, where the two nations are on the brink of sitting on each other's neck, right? How are you going to do that? So the challenges are umpteen. This is at a geographical level. Now you come down. The challenge is to go to the sites and take out your cameras to film and fly drones over them. Multi-faith sites. There are over 150 multi-faith sites in the narrative of Guru Nanak through which we are unboxing Guru Nanak to understand him. typically a Sikh we announced this in 2018 end. 2019 happened to be the 550th year of Guru Nanak. I never aimed for 550th. My objective was not to do this docu-series for 550th. It was never attempted for that. My own journey from 2014 allowed me to get to this point that I said I should do this now. And I never even looked at 550th. But because I announced it, a lot of people in India caught on to this. And they went and did this narrative. But I look at their works and I say, you missed the point, because Guru Nanak's narrative is not about Gurdwaras. We respect Gurdwaras, we have a feeling, but they start from the Gurdwara and they end at the Gurdwara. Well, his narrative has to start from the interfaith sites. So how would you go inside the interfaith sites? And I will say this last statement and end this here. Interfaith sites, I'll not talk about other faith sites, but I'll just say, as a Sikh who has spent 7.5 years documenting in places, my core competency is documenting narratives in sites or in areas where others are either choosing not to go or cannot go because they just don't know how to navigate or they don't want to take risks. That's where I'm operating. That's my domain. Now, if I've done 7.5 years of my life dedicated to this, and I have continuously produced every 2 years some work, and yet today I can tell you, if I go to the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar, Golden Temple, and I say, here comes Amardeep, and I want to take out my camera and do something, I will not get permission. I will have to navigate for days and days to get that. Now, you try and apply that to the other faith sites. So you have got a problem at a geographical, at a narrative level problem, you got a geographical level problem, and you got site level problems. And then all this requires funding. You are getting a narrative langar. You are consuming it. I'm struggling with the fact that there's a bandwidth consumption happening. People are enjoying, but every stage there's an expense. Has anyone thought where the money comes from? How do you do it? It's all people coming forward in bits and pieces. But this is not to make profit. And the more people support, the more we move. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. We'll come back to the funders and funding part of it later, and also the translation that you talked about. But Vininder, to come to you now, will you tell us how it was for you? Because so many of these countries, like Amardeep has just mentioned, were these conflict-torn or war-ravaged or whatever, difficult terrains, very difficult to traverse, especially for women, because in so many of these places, women are totally invisibilized, or whatever you want to call it. So what was it like?
Yeah, you know what, Preeti, when I went into this, we decided that we'll embark on the journey. I went with a very open mind. I never felt threatened. And being a woman, I'm going to be sort of marginalized, or probably I'm going to be targeted. In fact, you'll be surprised, I was more worried if these men, the men in the team, went alone. I felt, as being a woman, probably I'm going to give them that cushioning, that softness to the entire team. Probably I'm going to be more accepted by other people than these men going on a mission. So I never felt any kind of anxiety, or in fact, a lot of people were saying, oh my God, going to Afghanistan, Iran, where women are probably not treated well. But I went in with, a lot of conviction, and that without me, this is not going to work. I'm being a little vain out here as a woman, because I got a feeling that if then I looked into Guru Nanak's women in Guru Nanak's life. They were empowered women during their times. If you see in the 15th century, we hardly talk about Mata Sulakshmi, Guru Nanak's wife. In 15th century, she supported her husband to go on a mission for 22 years while she was staying behind home as a single parent, what I would say in today's terminology. She was a single parent looking after her children, probably her in-laws. She was the only child looking after her parents. And she somewhere gave me the power, which she's not talked much about, but I feel she should be given a lot of credit for what for Guru Nanak to accomplish his mission for oneness. So she became probably my mentor in my own way. While she was sitting at home and looking after everything, I felt I would like to visit where Guru Nanak went. What motivated Guru Nanak to go to all these places? Let me go and see and figure out. It wasn't easy being a woman, but I felt I took this as an opportunity where I would break the ice. I made sure that I take the front seat next to the driver. I sat right in front. And the best way to become a part of the team is the driver who's going to drive you through all the terrains, to all the sites, break the ice with him and make him comfortable with you, and then make the entire team comfortable with you. Because I was very comfortable, they were uncomfortable with me. Because one woman and the others were all men, but it was up to me how I would make them comfortable. So once that ice was broken and once we became one team, and then what Guru Nanak says, Ape Purak, Ape Hi Nari, even these men learned there's no difference actually. It's all conditioned. It's a society who conditions them. And once that breaks, I felt it became smooth in terms of having a teamwork to be done. Yes, there were challenges as a woman, like, you go to a roadside dhaba in Afghanistan, so women are not allowed to sit with men outside. So little challenges like those. Then
physically also. Yeah,
physical kind of challenges, biological challenges. I would say, like, I would get up at 3 a.m. and eat and drink water then, and probably break my fast only when we would return at 10 in the evening, because there is no place on the way that I can go ease myself.
Really, yes. Exactly.
Right. So,
I know there's so many other things that, one has to think of as a woman whenever you travel all these terrains. Anyway, also from what you said, because it's a journey which is, it's like going on at 2 levels for both of you. So there is the journey of Nanak, which you are, of course, following, recreating in a manner. And then there is your own journey. So what was this coalescing like? Amardeep, would you like to comment on that? Or you, Vininda, whichever?
I would just like to say it was very liberating for me. There was so much of unlearning that I had to do on my level to learn and assimilate what I was experiencing during the field work. Yeah. What we had learned and what we were conditioned with, I wouldn't have achieved anything, and we collectively would have not achieved anything if we didn't unlearn. So this has been my journey. I felt that we need to do a lot of unlearning ourselves to be able to learn something new and assimilate. So that's my take on this journey.
Amardeep, you have something to add to that? Like this parallel journey?
I can give my perspective. Before I give that, I just want to add to what Vininder said earlier about her experiences in the team as a single woman. The biggest achievement was when the ice was broken in Afghanistan. Khalid, who has become our son, he was a driver. So we made sons and brothers and mothers and sisters in every country, right? But Khalid became our son. But once the ice was broken, he says, "Ma'am, will you like to drive?" Right? And on the way to Ghazni, like on that Afghanistan road, I think Vininder would have been the first woman to after years to have driven.
Okay.
And he couldn't believe, the driver couldn't believe himself that a woman can drive, right? So
how wonderful.
That was hilarious. As far as the journey, the two journeys, of course, there are, I have a different view about it, right? So when you see the documentary, there is, of course, at a spiritual level, let's talk from a music point of view and then come to our own journeys. There are two streams running inside this. There's Guru Nanak's journey, and Amardeep as a host is trying to retrace that 550 years. And therefore, the musicology around it, whenever the male voice sings, it's actually what is documented in the historical text as what Guru Nanak said at XYZ. And those are the shabads. At Mashhad, what did he say? At Jagannath, what did he say? And so on and so forth. They come out in the male sound, which represents Guru Nanak, right? And then there is an Amardeep's own internal journey, because he's sometimes under conflict, looking at things, what is there. He's sometimes reflecting. He's sometimes asking questions. But I'm not a preacher. I'm not a person who's standing at the Gurdwara and I'm going to tell you what's right and wrong. It's my own internal reflections that are happening, and the answer through Guru Nanak's verses are coming in the form of a Pakistani singer who's singing back, and that's the internal conversation that I'm having. That's at a two level inside the narrative itself. But then the question comes in is, people think that because you're seeing a docu-series, Amardeep is actually truly going through those two journeys. There's a perception and there's a reality, and unfortunately, the perception is not always reality, right? The reality on the ground is it's a very challenging project. This is a project when we started, and some of the people in the film industry said that first and foremost, this is the likes of Nat Geos and BBC should be doing it. And if they do it, they gave an obnoxious number of some $25 to $30 million is what's going to cost to do it. And it's going to be taking about 8 to 9 years to do it, right? And we've done it in 3 years, flat delivered at a marginal cost. Now, if you're trying to do that, you are going on a full throttle, full attention, every moment, every second. You are getting into areas where your team's life is at risk. Your own life is at risk. We got 2 daughters, right, whom we have left at college, right? But you've taken the call to get onto it. You've got a narrative problem going on. You got to observe things. You got, sometimes in these countries, the intelligence people are after you. Sometimes a lot of things happen, right? Cameras sometimes start giving problems. Sometimes the money starts going into red. The balance sheet starts going into red. So does Amardeep on the field have any time for self-reflection? I'm glad I didn't have any time for self-reflection, because you're not on a spiritual path out there. You are on a project, right? If in the making of the final product, if it evokes feeling to the viewer, and if it makes you feel that you've gained something out of our own experiences that we've actually articulated in a very concise and a very seamless manner, if you've gained it, we've gained it, because we are one.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was always thinking of, the parallels of the journey, because of course there is a journey that you are documenting and showing, and then you are traveling along that route and you have different experiences, because what was there then is not there now, not in the same way. So, I also think it is such a fantastic way of documenting, of course, but also you're giving us our history back. So there is preserving, there is documenting, there is archiving, and there is also keeping alive this heritage, giving it back to us again to tell us that all these places exist. Many of these places, of course, the Gurdwaras were probably not in the original shape, because of course communities have moved and they have been forced to move for various reasons, including partition. But in many of the places, the Gurdwaras have been looked after. A couple of places I saw that they'd been turned into schools. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, about the shifting after partition, what happened?
Well, I think unfortunately for the adherents of Guru Nanak, I'm not going to use the term Sikh, because when we're talking about the domain of Guru Nanak, then it's the entire Indus belt. It's Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, many other traditions. They have a feeling for Guru Nanak. That's what our forefathers were, right? So when I look at from that perspective, I say what unfortunately has happened in 7 decades is that the adherents of Guru Nanak have actually had to face a lot of unrepairable challenges because of the way the socio-political or the political environment has actually fractured the entire region. And to me, it's not 1947 India, Pakistan. What people forget is that the Afghanistan, the more west you go from East Punjab, right? We today have an East Punjab centric view. I have traveled extensively in the Indus region. I've traveled from Tibet till the Arabian Sea. Along the whole of the Indus region, I've done it. I've traveled in the Punjab side of the Indus Belt's 5 rivers. I've traveled in the Afghanistan side. So I've seen it all. When it was a seamless region, the community as a culture, the adherents of Guru Nanak was spread from Afghanistan right up till India, right? That has got fractured in 1947 by the Ratcliffe Line, which has actually made 3 parts of it. 1 section in Afghanistan, 1 section in Pakistan, and 1 section in India. And people tend to see it from an India-Pakistan point of view. Don't forget, 300,000 people in 1947, because of what happened in India-Pakistan, were left blocked in Afghanistan because now they could not seamlessly travel, because cultures, when they face challenges, they are not like binary. They swell or they contract. because of how the challenges happen. And suddenly what happened, there was a Ratcliffe line and then a Durrand line on the other side, and the culture could not move anywhere. And that is what has caused an immense problem to the entire adherents of Guru Nanak. So these gurdwaras, the places that you're talking about, some of them, of course, are being maintained now. There's a revival happening, and it's a good thing. As in one of the places, Kabir's verse in one of them was very profound, and I've said this in the episode 3 also, at Makhdumpur, right, where Sajjan Thag's narrative is there. It's written, Kabir's verse is there. Tera tujhko saupte kya lage mera, right? I've submitted what was yours. I've submitted, and that's the feeling I felt when I traveled inside this Indus region in the making of my 2 books and this documentary series, that we have lost so much physically, and physical loss has resulted in our intangible loss. Our generation right now today is lost probably because of 7 decades back what happened, and the consequences of that we have just lost the footing. So I think it's not just a physical loss. Gurdwaras are one aspect. The internal Gurdwaras are also lost, the spiritual aspect. And we are divided today very badly. And so therefore, the last thing I'll say is, the one thing to reflect about is from East Punjab, as you go towards the Western region and get into Afghanistan, right now the Hindu-Sikh community is all wiped out. There are only about 120 odd people left in Afghanistan. But when you go into that region, there is nothing like Hindu-Sikh, or, they're all adherents of Guru Nanak. It's a syncretic culture. It becomes more and more syncretic. You go to Sindh, Balochistan, if Gita is there, Guru Granth Sahib will be there. And I'm no one to say that because you got a Gita next to Guru Granth Sahib, that you are doing right or you're doing wrong. I'm no one to say that. I'm just studying it. And to me, it's the faith that they have makes me believe that they all are the adherents of Guru Nanak.
I just wanted to go back to the script, the scripting of the docu-series, because that also is a massive task involving a great deal of research into all of the places that you visited and everything you wanted to get into it, including by way of music and the message. So can you tell us about that, the writing of this script, whether you had something skeletal already there which you wanted to be focusing on, and how that moved along? Vininda, do you want to talk about that?
I'll answer that. So I would say for the scripting, the skeletal was done, I would say, by Amardeep. I would give him the credit for this project. It's his baby, and I can put myself as a nanny. So I would say his concepts were very clear that what he wanted in this docu-series. So he made the basic framework. What we could say is he studied all the Janam Sakhis. He did the mapping of the entire route, and he made entire skeletal, and he gave it to me after it was done. And then collectively we thought how we are going to, now there's a whole narrative about Guru Nanak, which is in the historical text. Then there's going to be a parallel journey that Amardeep is going to be taking us with through that journey. And we wanted to, even talk about his experiences, our experiences during the journey through Guru Nanak's verses and profound messages through his verses. So once I got all that while we were traveling, and the terrain that we were seeing, the experiences that we experienced during the journey, what I started doing was, because he had given me the framework to do, I started writing Guru Nanak's shabads, which I felt would be appropriate for that particular experience and feeling, which would propound Guru Nanak's very profound messages, which is very important. We had to bring out his philosophy other than just the shabads which he sang according to the historical text and the particular site in a particular geography. So this is how we framed the entire scripting. So, there are 3 probably components in the entire scripting. One is the historical text, where whatever the Janam Sakhis are saying. Then the metaphors used by Guru Nanak to explain people, which today we call it as miraculous incidents. But there was a deep, profound message behind those those incidents there. So then we had to go and do our research as to what were the metaphors behind that. What was Guru Nanak trying to tell us? What was he trying to teach us through those incidents, those verses? Then it was Amardeep's reflections during the journeys. This was the second part. And then the third part was more historical and the present times, what's happening in those sites, which after 500 years of Guru Nanak's passing away. So all those together is what came into the scripting. So, that's what has gone into the script. And Amardeep can add now because he did the basics of making the skeletal. What I would say is beautified the script. So Amardeep, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the biggest challenge, as I've said earlier, is that the level 1 of challenge in this whole narrative is about what is the narrative, and I just want to talk a little bit about that is because you can be crazy enough to say, I'll put my life at risk and pick up a huge camera and take a team and go into all these geographies. But for what? If you don't know the narrative, right? So what are you going to go and do there, right? So the question then is, where do you start the narrative? And this is the biggest challenge because the beauty of Guru Nanak is he has written nothing about his life. Nothing he has written about his life, right? He's only told us how to potentially reflect on our lives, right? And so you're going to do a journey of Guru Nanak based on an account that does not exist from the primary source. How are you going to do it is the question that comes up, right? So the closest Guru Nanak gets into giving any reference, just I'm giving as a geographical reference, is that he's in one of his, when Babur attacks during his time, and and he's in Punjab, and he writes, Khorasan Khasmana Kiya. So the Khorasan that we're talking today, west of Indus River, right? Khorasan Khasmana Kiya, destroyed the Khorasan, right? Because he came from Samarkand and he went through Afghanistan and he destroyed Khorasan Khasmana Kiya, Hindustan Daraya. And he's come on the east of Indus now. And he's now threatening the people on the east of Indus. That's the Khorasan, and Indus is a defining point, right? On the west is Khorasan and on the east is Hindustan, Hind, right? And what was the Hindustan at that point of time where he actually entered was Punjab. Now, he goes on to then talk about his heart's feelings with the divine. Guru Nanak's having a one-on-one discussion with the divine, right? In that Shabad. But he's still not telling you where did this happen, right? We have said it happened at Ahmedabad. We have made Gurdwaras in Ahmedabad. Let's subtract objectively. All right, I respect the Gurdwaras are there. I don't know where it happened, right? Guru Nanak did not say that. And so where do you start from his narrative? Now, the fact is, 65 years after his life, by Gurdas, he writes about, in his Vars, about Guru Nanak and Mardana traveling far and wide. But it's not big enough to make a 24-episode docuseries. He talks about them going to Batala, to Iraq, to Baghdad, to Makkah, and to a few more places. He talks about Meru Parbat and so on and so forth. So Meru Parbat. But it's not big enough, right? And then, so you look at the latter text, which I have been kind of delving into for past, and I've kept my mind open. The modern historians are sending Guru Nanak all over, but the old historical text that you see by Gurdas Ji writes 65 years after his life, and then about 100 years, till about 100 years after Guru Nanak's life, a large body of Janam Sakhi texts start appearing, out of which a lot of them the Sikhs have, because of lineage of Gurus, the succession issues, right? And there were some challenges. A lot of the Janam Sakhi, like Meherban Janam Sakhi, Sikhs have just kind of kept it aside. But I tell you, if you want to actually, don't have any biases, don't have any opinions, say, I'm objectively going to look at these texts. Meherban Janam Sakhi has the maximum number of shabads associated with Guru Nanak at each site. Are you going to throw that away because of succession issues? Are you going to objectively say, no, this is a piece of valuable data? So you start looking at all that. What you find in the earliest text is that there are few things that come out when you've studied that. And this cannot happen like a switch that one fine day you want to do this narrative, you put on the switch and it'll happen. You should have spent 20, 30 years inside this, right? And that's what slowly was developing. So 2-3 things that come out. First and foremost, there are variances in the texts, earliest texts. They have been written during the times of the Guru, so there is some merit in them. But there are a lot of commonalities, but there are variances also. You got to accept it. The other thing that comes out is there are only two people traveling, Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana. Like my Gurdas ji says, he's not talking about any Bala or anyone traveling. There are only two people traveling. And they have traveled far and wide. That's it. Those are similarities and dissimilarities. Now you take that forward, some 180 years after Guru Nanak's life, there's a third body of text that comes in, which suddenly becomes very popular inside the community. And this is the Bala Janam Sakhi. And Bala Janam Sakhi has got many variations over the period of time that have come up. But then there's a third person who starts traveling. And the narrative starts expanding. So much so that in the modern days now, anyone going anywhere on a sightseeing suddenly finds an Ekunkar edge somewhere, Guru Nanak has come here. WhatsApp University, Guru Nanak is continuing to travel. Facebook University, he's continuing to travel. There's no stopping. And I do say that, when I was at Jagannath temple, Jagannath, the English word Jagannath comes from Jagannath temple, right? The unstoppable power, the unstoppable force. And that's what Jagannath is. And I sometimes jokingly say that Guru Nanak has been turned into a Jagannath who's not stopped traveling even in the modern times. He's reached Russia. He's reached, there's a video in the YouTube, Guru Nanak in USA. Where do you stop him? So what I'm trying to come down to is that in the making of this narrative, it was very complicated to take all this aspect. And so we drew a line. We said we will not get into the older text. We will only look at the oldest text, the latter text, right? We will only look at the older text. And we will give some space of reflections inside them, but that's the guiding line. So we have only taken the text written up to 100, 150 years, not the latter ones. And the other thing is that we have, as Vininder has said earlier, there's a metaphoric element inside these. You can't throw the baby with the bathtub, because if you do that with all these texts, because you don't like them because of some mythological aspects that you can't understand, sure, throw it, because then you have nothing else left. Now, you would have, by now, if anyone has seen the docuseries in the 4 episodes, you would have got a gist that it's heavily backed by Gurbani. We are not deviating from that. Gurbani is our touchstone. The verses of Guru Nanak are a touchstone. But the metaphoric elements, as we start traveling, a lot of metaphoric elements because of artworks, we have thrown them away because we are not able to comprehend, understand. We've tried to interpret them with the verses that Guru Nanak is saying. And I'll not say more than that, but that's the piece that we have invested a lot of time and effort to understand. And that wouldn't have happened overnight, right? So that has taken us a lot of years to kind of get to that point to say that this is probably the narrative that probably makes sense. So,
yeah, I think that you must also talk more about the Shabads, the music. That is such an overarching part of it. This is what imbues it with the kind of value that it has. I really want to know about the music of the thing, how you decided and what you put in, what came to you at that point that this was the right thing. And also because there's so many different voices, different singers that you have, different instruments also that are used. So tell us a bit about the music of the docuseries.
If you see, Guru Nanak and music are inseparable. Words. Guru Nanak is only given words to us, and music, right? So
using the rags, like the old rags have been used rather than
we did that. We made sure that whichever rag that particular shabad is supposed to be sung in, it is done in that what we call as Nidharit rag. Right. It has been sung in that. So again, if you see, if people have seen the docuseries or they're going to see the docuseries, there's going to be one male vocal voice, which is going to be representing Guru Nanak verses, which he sang according to the historical text in particular sites and geographies. Then the second voice is a female's voice, which is going to be representing Amardeep's reflections, his philosophies, his questions, and the answers are coming through Guru Nanak's verses through a female voice, which is his soul talking to him. His soul is questioning something, and Guru Nanak's verse in a female's voice is answering to his queries. So this is the second component. Then what we have incorporated in this docuseries is the Bhagats. Bhagats which were contemporary of Guru Nanak and who were before Guru Nanak, who are enshrined in the Guru Granth Sahib. So the third voice in the docu-series is who's singing for the Bhagats, who they are representing the Bhagats. There's another voice which that voice is singing the first poetry in the starting during Guru Nanak's birth, which is a poem by Allama Iqbal. And then towards the end, when he passes away in Kartarpur, there's a poetry by Anand Narayanan. And we made sure in spirit of Guru Nanak that we have an interfaith singers. The beauty is that there's a whole story in this.
Exactly.
Satninder is our main male vocalist. Salima Khwaja is our female vocalist from Pakistan. Then Mr. B.S. Narang, he's no more. He's singing for the Bhagats. And then we have Ajay Tiwari, who sang the two poems from Allama Iqbal and Anand Narayanan. The beauty is there are two Hindus, one Sikh and one Muslim. And B.S. Narang is the guru of Satninder, and Satninder taught Salima all the Shabads and the Rags. Salima by profession is a lawyer who's a female vocalist, and she has learned the Rababi style from Pai Chand. They were the Muslim bards who would sing in the Gurdwaras before partition. So she just by chance met Pai Chand, and she imbibed this tradition from him. So it's a beautiful story how a Hindu guru has taught a Sikh boy, and that Sikh boy has become a guru to a Muslim girl. And the tradition has passed on of Nidharit Rags in this. So probably I would say, or I can say, we can say that Salima is probably the first female vocalist in Pakistan who's sung all the rags of Guru Nanak.
It's
So
fascinating.
we have about 300 Shabads in total, more than 300 because maybe 320. I have not got the exact number, but there's a lot which has gone in the training as well. It was a Salima, even though she knows Punjabi, but there are slight accents which she was not able to pick up because they're very particular to Gurbani. So we had another person who did the Santhya, what we call in Punjabi, Santhya is the right pronunciation of Gurbani, which he taught Salima how to pronounce the Shabads. And Satninder trained her over Zoom. He taught her all the rags. So this is what has gone in the
There are so
musicology.
many stories within the making of this.
Yes.
In fact, if I can just add to that, and what Vicky has just Vinod has just said. Look, one of the things that stands out is that what partition has done is not just the division of boundaries. It's also actually divided our cultures, our many other aspects. So, for instance, sometimes I laugh. On this side of the border in East Punjab, we have Kali Maa ki dal, right? On that side, that dal is missing, right? We only have the broken white dal and all restaurants. There's no Kali dal there, right? So even the dals have got divided, right?
Okay.
Then one of the challenges with Salima was Salima's a mite by herself. She's a beautiful singer. We tried to look for a soul in the voice, and we couldn't find it in our own community. We couldn't find it around in India. We were looking at the right voice, and we found it there. Now the thing was that voice. And what Salima or partition has done is she's trained with certain set of rags. Now a singer need not know all the rags, right? So because she's not been exposed to the Sikh traditions, and in the Guru Granth Sahib there are many mixed rags, right? Like Gaudi Gwareri, right? Or Ramkali Dakhni and Ramkali. There are combinations coming in, and sometimes you might not even know what Gwareri is, right? And now you're combining Gaudi and Gwareri, it becomes complicated, right? So that knowledge base has also got divided. So in the Sikh traditions also, many people don't know about these things. So first you have to get the right people with that knowledge base. And now Salima is a mite by herself. But it's just that she was not exposed to this aspect. So it has taken us good about 9 months to get a cross-border training done over the internet for the rags that she was not exposed to. She was exposed to Gurbani because of the Mardana tradition, right? Through Baichand, but the rags, she was not actually, some of them she was. And that took us about 9 months to get a train, and then we recorded. And what Nikki was saying, I just want to expand to that for the people who may not understand this, is the small nitty-gritties of the problem, right? Punjabi has, unfortunately, in India, getting overlaid with Hindi. On Pakistan side, Punjabi's got overlaid with Urdu, right? So both the sides, Punjabi has become the child of some unknown mother, right? So, but the fact is, those of us who know Gurbani, there are certain pronunciations like Kanak. Now, Arna does not exist in Urdu, right? Tarti, Palu. In Urdu, it will be Bhalu, Dharti. It's not Tarti, Palu. It's Dharti, Bhalu. Now, if I'm going to write, if we translate the Shabads from Gurmukhi and write it in Urdu and give it, if someone's going to just read it, they will read it as Dharti, Dharat, Dhol, not Tarat Tol, right? Now, that's the problem you're dealing with out there.
Yep. But it's painstaking work that you've done.
It is.
Anyway.
It is.
Every aspect of it. And I'm wondering, what was the reaction of the locals, in all the places that you were traveling to? What kind of reactions?
Oh, it's been a beautiful experience. People are amazing. We were, I don't know, there was something, wherever we went, we only saw more positivity than negativity. And people were just there to welcome you, to give you all the support that they could give. And it has been, I would say, locals were the backbone who actually supported us. Without their support, this would have not happened. It is all about teamwork, people coming together, that we could have done this. Otherwise, it was not possible. We really got a lot of support from people in countries like Baghdad or Iran, Afghanistan for that matter. Everywhere there was a beautiful support that we got. Amadi, would you like to add to this?
I'm going to give a realistic picture on this. I mean, there are 3 levels, 2, 3. My mind works in a bit of a corporate style, so I put things in boxes and go down, right? So the first level of support, your vision is there. You have to navigate through these geopolitical countries where visa itself is a big challenge. I mean, no one gave me the visa to get inside Iraq. I mean, there's no embassy of Iraq in Singapore, right? Singapore does not have a relationship with Iraq, right? As a Singaporean, I have to be a Muslim and going in a group of 5 people to be getting a religious visa to go to Iraq. And neither am I a Muslim, and neither can I get 5 more people. Even if I say for this project, I'm going to change my faith. It ain't going to happen, right? So these are the high-level challenges, right? Getting into Tibet, not me. As a Singaporean, I can go into Tibet. I cannot film, but I have to not take my people, my crew, and they are from Pakistan or from India, 2 different crews, right? I can't take my India crew into Pakistan. I can't get my Pakistan crew into India. And neither of them can get into Tibet.
Sounds like,
neither of them can go into Tibet, right? Yeah. So at a political level, there are amazing levels of challenges to navigate. There is no embassy of Afghanistan in Singapore, right? To even get there are stories around how we got the visa. We've been just living in the moment. We just stepped, and one thing led to the other. And just before Corona actually shut down the world, we had done the entire filming, but it was unplanned, and every moment we were looking for, and we kept getting, and that's how we entered Afghanistan. That's how we entered Iran, and so on and so forth. But it was not easy. So at a government level, the bureaucracy does not understand necessarily the intent that you have of the oneness that you're trying to do. It's only when the product comes out, they start seeing, wow, there is something good in this. Then they want to rally around you. But for 3 years, you're struggling with it, right? And the world is like that. They will not see. The problem today is that everyone starts with a point of suspicion, right? And you got to get inside and get the job done because you have a vision. So that's the first level of problem. Now, you get inside a country, some of the places you're not allowed. As I just told you, in Darbar Sahib in Amritsar, as a Sikh who spent 7.5 years of my life to my community, I still will not get permission to film. And imagine doing that in multi-faith sites. Are they waiting for you to film? Every place, the police will be there, the intelligence will be there, and so forth. And you're going to different countries, the levels of challenges they're very different. It's not a bed of roses there. And you have to navigate through that. Now comes the most wonderful part at the third level. So first level is the geography, getting into the country. Second level, the sites challenges, the people sitting there. No, they are not there. They're doing a job. They've been told that you just can't come in and start doing it. And how will you navigate through that? We have found ways to navigate, but it's not easy. And that's why I'll not repeat. The third level is the people. People is the most beautiful thing, right? And a lot of times I say, is as you think, so you attract. So it's partly as they are thinking, that's why they're attracting us. And as we are thinking, we are attracting them. But at the end of this project, every country, we've got a brother, sister, father, mother, son, and it's the people at the grassroots levels, which is the most beautiful part of this entire garden of roses, right? But there are a lot of thorns in it also. Roses don't come without thorns, right?
Yes, but I think that message of oneness, of humanity, of everybody being part, the creator being in every being. I think this is what you set out to say, and if this is what you found on the ground, then I think it's saying a great deal, because despite all the thorns and despite all the hurdles, this is what comes out in the final product, as you call it. My final question, at least over here, would be, what you're doing now, because I know that you are keen to have this translated into Hindi as well as Punjabi, and that, of course, funds are required for all of that. And how are you going forward with that? And if you also have a message that you'd like to give, did your life change in any way, an impact of the tribal? If all of this you can say.
Yeah. So, we've done the product. Product is done. In the 3.5 years, I can tell you, there were a lot of times we thought this will not get done. We've had very, very tough experiences on the field, right? We have thought of abandoning it, right? We've run short, our balance sheets have gone into red. We've got stuck on the corners, right? And then suddenly somewhere the energy comes in and suddenly enables it. That's the beauty of it. Right at the moment it's been happening, right? Now, in a short span of just over 3 years, we've delivered a product which a BBC or a Nat Geo in 20-hour content to start from scratch to end would take, I'm told, about 8 years, and a $25 million project. We've delivered at a marginal cost, and in 3 years, 3.5, just over 3 years, right? We've delivered it. Now the question is, if the product resonates with us, now there is no ambiguity. Product is there in front of you. You see it, you judge it, you gauge it. Is this the narrative that I want to leave for the posterity? If it is, then what is it that should stop us from translating this and creating the versions into Punjabi and Hindi? Everyone is telling us do it.
Yeah.
Consumption is very high in the last about 20 days. We launched it on 14th October. We are on to the 4th episode right now. I've already got a notification from the hosting service, which we didn't plan for, that you are on the top 1 percentile of the bandwidth consumption. So we are going to charge you on a customized contract. These are all hidden costs of a narrative langar. Langar, you can make it.
But it takes money. Term that you use, this langar, narrative langar.
It is a narrative langar. We are not charging you. It's freely available. We are figuring out how to fill the cost along with creating the narrative. And so we've done it for the community, for the broader communities. Then when will it going to happen that rather than telling us it should be done this way, that way, when are you going to come and support us? Right? The fact is, I say the problem is very simple. And I'm struggling. The consumption is very high. The support is not running at that pace.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is probably 3,000 people to get up and say, you know what? I've learned something out of it. I go and see a movie with 5 people in my family in US and I spend $150 in one night. This is coming to in my home. Are there 3,000 people with $100 each who can put down? And quickly, if you can, then we can create this 20 episodes, because it's going to cost us money to do 20 episodes into 24 episodes, 20 hours into another language and into a third language. Punjabi is the first target, and then Hindi, because English is great, so we are unboxing it, but the masses will not gain anything out of it unless we get into their language. Yes, and if it is langar, then langar has to be taken ahead, right?
Yeah, bilkul.
So when is it that we're going to actually change our direction from saying without faith does not survive without a good narrative, right? And a good narrative, if you now you see it, you judge it. If it is right, then are there 3,000 people with $100, and can they rally around it quickly? It's not a big task. Don't go for a movie, one movie in the name of Guru Nanak. That's all it takes. And we will create it in Punjabi Hindi. But right now, it's all consumption. And I sometimes think we are sitting in this capitalist. I worked 25 years in a capitalistic environment, right? I know what dollars, cents, and basis points mean. But we are unfortunately sitting in a capitalistic environment. You give something free. People want to consume it, want more and more. Very good phrases. But where are we going to put our responsibility? That's one thing, right? So I'm going to stop there. You asked, the second thing was, so if anyone wants to support us, just go to thegurunanak.com. There's a donate button there. There's entire projects listing there. Everything's written and right in front of you. What is our next 5-year plan? If you feel like it, we are doing the right thing, go ahead and support us. We will deliver, right? You asked us about our own, the second question was our own development or something, right?
No, I mean, after, meaning the impact on you of this.
Impact on me. Project. As I said earlier, you know what? This is a stealth mission that I've been running for the last 7.5 years. It's like since I left the corporate world, I'm not thinking. We've been working 16, 17 hours a day. We are thinking about the project. But the development is if we are leaving something for you all, right? And if the collective consciousness can develop, then we are all developing. Someone has to do the lifting, right? Someone has to do the heavy lifting. And that's what is happening. But I've spent 30 years of my life reading, contemplating, thinking. Probably now is not the time to read anymore. I don't read anymore nowadays. I don't have the time to read, right? But I've read a lot, right? But the fact now is to deliver. And right now, this phase of my life is probably to do the heavy lifting of leaving it for someone else. And if you can gain something out of it, rest assured, I've also gained.
No, I think there are a lot of people who are listening right here, and also that we have some people who've said they've messaged you privately as well. And definitely from Maja House, I am giving you my word. I would definitely be supporting.
Thank you.
There is a question from Gurmehar saying, could you please dwell some more on the interfaith solidarity aspect of Sikhi?
Well, Guru Nanak is all about solidarity, right? I mean, we often, you see, episode 2, when Guru Nanak comes out of Bain Darya, the river Bain in Sultanpur, often the narrative that is said is that, or is told to us through generations, is he says, na ko Hindu, na Musalman, right? I think he was trying to imply that humanity, right? But the Shabad, we have not said that in this narrative because we're very careful. We are backing it up with Gurbani, right? So we said that's not Gurbani, right? That's someone's writing. It's an author who's written it in the Janam Sagi tradition. Na ko na Hindu, na ko Musalman. Guru Nanak did not say that. And the essence is about the interfaith solidarity is when he comes out of the Bain River, what the Shabad is being sung at that time in the docu-series is reflects it. He says, Eko taram dride sach koi, right? Oneness, the only righteousness is the only religion and of oneness, right? So what more can you have as a profound oneness message? Guru Nanak is all about oneness. Why did he travel to 150 sites across the world in 9 countries? Why did he do that? There were no gurdwaras that time. His whole 22 years of his life are doing that. So there could be nothing more of a solidarity than that.
There's a message from GNDU, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, that it is in the process of setting up a Center for Interfaith Studies with a dedicated division of travels of Guru Nanak, and that they would love to associate with the team behind this great body of work. So that, and then Sandeep Singh says, till today I did not know about this work. There was a program on Sikh Channel UK in the middle of the night about Pakistani Gurdwaras, but it wasn't advertised. I guess my question is, how can this be widely advertised? There are 3 Sikh channels in the UK, and I'm hoping that there will be wider telecast.
Well, the unfortunate answer to this is that if anyone expects advertisement money from him, I said, I have no money. This is a narrative langar. right? I'm not in a hurry out here. Guru Nanak is not running anyway. It's not a Shah Rukh Khan movie that has to get all its returns in four weeks' time, right? It's not a. Guru Nanak is not running anyway. Guru Nanak's narrative is good out here, and it's going to be made available. But we don't have the money. We don't have the money to do all advertisements and other things. My question to the community is, rather than putting it to us that what can we do to popularize, we've created a narrative, right? We are running at a very rapid pace. I've got a job here to make Punjabi and Hindi. We've thrown it out. When is it that you are going to own the Guru Nanak's narrative? What is it that you can do? Tell me that. It's your narrative. It's publicly available. What can you do to enable to spread it? How can you get it to 100 people in your network? How can you enable to a channel in your community to speak to us? We are there, right? But you see, unfortunately, I will not name any organization, but there's so many great influencers in our as adherents of Guru Nanak. But my last 5 months, as I've started from a content creator, I started wearing the marketing hat. A lot of people have helped us, and we thank them. A lot of press coverage, a lot of things have happened. But the influencers, today's world is a social media world, right? It's all visual social media. You need influencers to do something. And I'll not name any of them, but many influencers have been actually approached, and none of them have actually felt their moral obligation to even say a word, right? In fact, we are living in a very fragmented world. A lot of organizations some organizations are doing a great job, thank you very much, but a lot of influencing organizations who have a large followership, all they need to say is that there's merit in this docuseries, see it for yourself, let me just tell my base. But then it comes down to saying things which I don't understand. They say, one or two organizations turn around saying, well, this is not our content, right? So we can't get it out, right? It has to be our content. You want co-brandings, you want this. You know what? It's Guru Nanak. It's freely available. What are you going to do about it? Tell us that. We've created it. It's free for you.
Yes. I don't know whether we should go to any more questions, because I think that is the note that we should end on.
So my WhatsApp is, I'm writing it again here. Anyone wants to write down? +65 9832 6508. Yeah, you can write down this number, and anyone wants to contact me, they can write to me here.
Okay, it's there now, so I think they can all see it. I think we'll end on that note and leave that appeal with everybody here, and to also please pass it on to all your friends, and as Amardeep says, also influencers, in case you know those. And please publicize this, because it is the most wonderful content that anybody can possibly see. The message, the way it's been put across, all of it cohesively, really something to treasure. And on that note, I think I'm going to end here. Amardeep, thank you very much for being here today. And Vinender, thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. Thanks, everybody.
Not only about the series, but also about yourselves and how you went about making this fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.